up, pull up, don't sink.
Young British pilots are earning their wings in the skies above Indonesia.
Caution, terrain.
It's one of the most dangerous places to fly in the world.
Don't really want to get into the same situation as he did. It's high risk out here, basically.
With almost no aviation jobs in the UK, Brits with little flying experience are choosing to travel halfway across the planet to get their first pilot job.
When you see something real like today, you do kind of want to put it out of your mind.
The winds can really kick you up the ass.
You feel like you don't have control.
But putting their lives on the line
Stall.
could pay off big time and help them get their dream job with a commercial airline.
Yeah, if anyone from BA Recruitment is watching, I'm really keen to go back and fly in the UK.
That cheeky little air stewardess.
In tonight's episode,
We're trying to build this over here.
storm clouds and volcanoes push the pilots to their limits.
I'm not happy going through this. Let's go over there. If we fly through an ash cloud, it could shut down the engine.
And rookie pilot Nick has to deal with a plane flying too close for comfort.
Traffic.
We have no visuals. It's going to be in the clouds somewhere. Everybody look out for traffic.
Young British pilots joining the Indonesian airline SusiAir find themselves facing up to the biggest challenges that exist in aviation.
We have volcanoes to put up with every day. We have runways that could be little tiny mud strips on the side of mountains.
Weather can change at any moment, within like a few minutes. Dogs, pigs, and people trying to cross the runway.
It's scary as hell when something like that happens.
But it's not just the extreme flying they must take on.
Yeah, there's many things out in Indonesia. I want to try and bite you, get into bed with you.
There's a lot of tropical diseases out here. We've got dengue, malaria, typhus. Basically everything out here wants to get you.
There have been 128 plane crashes in Indonesia over the last 20 years. But despite the country's poor aviation record, intrepid airline boss Susi has built a company worth millions of pounds.
All I need is that the crew is ready to fly above 100 hours every month.
She's one of the most powerful women in Indonesia and is renowned for her no-nonsense approach.
Susi is definitely not the sort of person you want to cross. Yeah, if you cross Susi, she will come down on you like a ton of bricks.
Susi started out with just 2 planes. 10 years later, she has nearly 50, flies to 168 destinations across the country, and has a constant demand for new pilots.
SusiAir is the best choice that a new, fresh graduate pilot could ever get in the world.
If they're prepared to accept the risks that come with flying out here. Today, 28-year-old Captain Dave Burns is flying some of Susi's most valued passengers.
We've taken out some seats at the back of the aircraft here, ready to go and pick up 13 boxes of fresh live lobster from the island of Simlu.
His family were dead set against his move to Indonesia.
My parents were like, oh, what are you doing? It's a dangerous country. There are many aviation accidents in Indonesia. We don't want you to go for the job.
Having left behind careers as a car salesman and as a burger flipper, Dave's ultimate goal now is to fly a jumbo jet back home. But he also shares Susi's money-making ambitions.
My long-term goal is to earn loads of money, live in a nice house and just fly a big plane and have a hot wife. But at the moment, I'm putting up with SusiAir. Can you just make sure that's locked for us?
Flying from Medan on the northern island of Sumatra, Dave will be picking up the lobsters 300 miles to the west from the island of Simelu. But a build-up of heavy clouds at the destination is preventing him from taking off. They're not allowed to land unless they can see the airstrip from 5 kilometers away.
We've got the battle with the weather to see whether our aircraft is going to successfully land once we get to Simelu visually.
Dave knows only too well how badly things can go wrong for pilots in Indonesia.
My time in SusiAir, we've been through 3 accidents, and I've lost friends being killed in plane crashes.
Number one, the aircraft was overweight and they were flying towards a high mountain range, and the aircraft just couldn't climb over that mountain range. Accident number 2, one of the local tribal guys was walking across the runway. He was apparently deaf and couldn't hear the plane coming. Number 3, my good friend died in that accident. When the aircraft had a fuel problem, he was only 100 meters away from safely landing on the road.
It's a realization about life and that how you're not invincible and how anything can happen.
The lobsters are a huge moneymaker for Susi, but have to be delivered fresh. So despite the threat of poor visibility, the airplane dispatcher is under pressure for them to be collected as soon as possible.
He's come out personally. So there's going to be an issue. Hi, Danny.
I want you must landing in Simelu, because it's impossible this lobster flight with you, okay? If you're not landing, problem with me.
Okay, I want to speak to Charles before we make that decision.
Okay. Ya ini dia mau ngomong dulu sama Charles, kalau cuaca bagus dia terbang sekarang ini. Lagi boarding.
If I don't land and I don't get the lobsters, then the lobsters aren't going to be fresh, and this is the pressure that we have.
The captain has responsibility for making the final call on whether it's safe to take off.
Yo, dude. What's the weather exactly? He says the weather is at least 5 kilometers, which is completely legal for us to fly. So I've just called boarding and we'll go and pick up the lobsters.
India Air 135, contact director 1.
That's again.
Once in the air, Dave has to navigate another major hazard pilots often experience flying from Medan: bird strike.
If you could keep out the birds for me.
If a bird ends up going through the engine, then we could have an engine failure and be preparing for emergency landing.
Bird strikes are a real threat to flight safety. A forced emergency landing in the jungle-covered terrain would almost certainly lead to casualties, if not deaths. Without the advanced technology you would find on a jumbo jet, it's down to the pilots to visually navigate their way through any hazards.
It's very tricky, very, very tricky. It takes a lot of skill. When you compare it to the airliners back at home, there's a lot more hands-on flying.
And also, unlike the big jet airliners, they get no support from air traffic control on landing.
Because these airports have no instrumentation to help us land, so it's literally our feet, our hands, and our own eyes.
Despite the bird strike threat and the visibility issues, Dave safely navigates his way into Simelu, and Susi's urgent lobster cargo is waiting on the tarmac.
So we've arrived to pick up our little passengers. Keeps on growling at me. 1 kilo of these lobsters is £27, and today we're carrying 280 kilos back to Medan, ready to go onto the dinner plates around Asia. So we better make sure they have a safe flight back to Medan.
Airspeed is live. 60 knots.
But there's a problem. Dave's weather radar is warning him of storm clouds gathering off the coast of Sumatra, moving towards his intended path. Only a few weeks ago, a similar small plane crashed in Indonesia, killing all 4 people on board after a lightning strike broke off the plane's wing.
We have all these build-ups and storms started building right the way along the coast. So we need to make sure we stay away from these storms at a safe distance.
What makes matters worse is the storms blowing in from the east, forcing Dave to navigate too close for comfort to one of Indonesia's active volcanoes. Mount Sinabung last erupted just 3 weeks ago, blowing thick volcanic ash into the air for miles around. These ash clouds can be catastrophic to aeroplanes.
If we fly through an ash cloud, if it is a very dense ash cloud, it could shut down the engine, and we would never get the engine back, and then we would have problems.
With no pressurized cabin on the Cessna to maintain oxygen levels, they can't fly high enough to go over the clouds. With only basic instrumentation, they'll have to navigate through the storm by sight, looking for gaps in the cloud to see the terrain ahead.
The volcano is slightly to the right there, so let's go with the original plan through that gap.
While also checking there are no planes in their path.
Let's go slightly to the left. Let's go through that gap there. Get to the right, please. Yeah, let's head through that. I'm not happy going through this. Let's go over there. I know. Go up there. Let's go through this.
Having made it past the volcano, Dave now finds the storm closing in as he approaches the airport.
Go slightly to the left towards both. On those sides of the runway. 80 knots. Got the runway lights in the sky.
500. Minimums.
Thanks to some skillful maneuvering and nerves of steel, the plane and its cargo reach their destination.
We got back safely. The problem is the heat builds up in the afternoon. It builds and builds and builds and just turns into thunderstorms across Sumatra. The area Sumatra between the Indian Ocean and the Malacca Strait is just one big heat machine that just generates the worst storms in Indonesia.
All of the pilots at SusiAir have to come to terms with the risks that come with their job every time they get into a plane.
It's a challenging experience flying for SusiAir because we have to deal with all kinds of dangers every single day.
Indonesian airline SusiAir perform a vital service connecting the remote communities in the mountainous province of Papua. But the flying here is some of the most testing and dangerous in the world. Only SusiAir's most experienced pilots are allowed to tackle these deadly skies.
Thunderstorms could potentially pull the airplane apart. Doesn't matter how good you think you are. Wind will get you, something will get you.
34-year-old Matt Dearden's former career in IT could not be further from his experiences in Papua.
Back in UK, it was all looking rosy, you know. It was pretty well paid, a couple of cars, a flat in Bristol. It was on paper looking pretty sweet, but yeah, I just wasn't happy with it. It was mundane, and I figured this is maybe not what I want to do for the rest of my life.
At the age of 30 and with minimal flying experience, Matt took a huge gamble and left behind the stable life he had built in the UK.
They gave me 10 days notice, so it was a 10-day blitz to try and get everything sorted out, pack my life into a suitcase and head out to Indonesia. The first night was a sort of a sleepless one, really, just mulling everything over. God, what have I done? You know, packed in everything back home. This is just going to be a massive mistake, and I'm going to have to borrow some money for a flight back home.
Matt's delivering rice and cooking materials from his base in Timika to the remote village of Tuput, 3,000 meters up in the mountains. For most of the tribal peoples of Papua, contact with the outside world was only made in the 1950s, and the majority of them still live very traditional lives.
Many of the locals here, a lot of them haven't even been in an aeroplane. I mean, some of them just sit on the floor, they sit on each other. So, you know, you get them in a seat, and then you show them how to use a seatbelt, how to open it again. It's looking pretty windy out there as well. It's certainly picking up down here, and just looking out on the ridges in the distance, there are actually the clouds building, so I suspect it's going to be a bit of a bumpy one.
The high terrain surrounding Tuput is notorious for causing turbulence, and strong winds on the final approach can make landings treacherous.
Calling in Victor uniforms ready for departure 30. Victor uniform ready for takeoff.
The tribal people are not frequent flyers, and mountain captains don't have the luxury of a stewardess or even a co-pilot if any of them are thrown into panic by the experience of being 10,000 feet off the ground.
Passengers are mixed. Some of them just think it's fun, and they're sort of whooping and hollering and kind of thinking it's like a roller coaster. Some of them, it's a little bit scary for them.
The weather on the journey is soon bad enough to worry Matt, let alone his nervous passengers.
As you can see already, there's a lot of cumulus clouds building up. We don't want to be flying in those things. I want to give those ones a wide berth, certainly in a small airplane like this.
Cumulus clouds can build into thunderstorms, which can be incredibly dangerous to small planes like these single-engine porters.
Certainly, it's happened before. Wings will come off, that sort of thing. That's the way it goes out here. Papua takes no prisoners. We'll see how it goes. Fingers crossed it's not too bad.
As he nears his destination, Matt finds himself being thrown around. Turbulence is the #1 cause of serious injury in planes, and has even led to the death of passengers thrown around by its force.
We're struggling with this turbulence here. Oh, yeah, she's looking pretty green. She's looking a little nervous. I think she's probably saying a little prayer or something.
Having got through the turbulence, Matt now has to worry about landing safely.
You can see we've got a hell of a crosswind actually.
To fight the strong crosswind, Matt is forced into a side-on crabbing approach. If he doesn't straighten up at the exact point of landing, he could run off the side of the runway. Matt's steady hand gets the terrified passengers safely onto the ground.
Running with happiness. I guess that was a little bit scary for her, but I think she'll just be happy to be on the ground, really.
With their ordeal over, the Dani women are reunited with their loved ones. Decisions on hiring and firing ultimately lie with no-nonsense airline boss Susi.
That's your problem. Maybe people are always nervous to see me. Many of my pilot things, I don't know. Sometimes I'm joking. I'm not going to bite you, so come closer.
And she's just summoned Captain Dave Burns for a meeting at the company HQ.
I received a message saying that Susi wanted to see me for an interview for a management position in Medan. Although you don't really know what these interviews are about. Whether I'm in trouble, whether I've done something wrong, whether I'm being praised, whether I'm being promoted. You never know in this company.
Are you nervous?
Yeah, I am quite nervous.
The previous time Dave was summoned to see Susi, he was suspended from duty.
I was temporarily fired for a couple of weeks. It was really something you could describe as a cultural difference between the Western world and Indonesia.
Being a Brit abroad, Dave managed to make such a huge cultural gaffe that Susi immediately hauled him to Jakarta for a telling off he'd never forget.
Susi is quite tough to deal with.
I'm gonna find you another $50,000.
You've got to stay on the good side of her. She's very, very vocal about what she wants.
You cannot deliver your service.
He needs to impress his boss because a bad reference could damage his chances of his dream job with a UK airline.
Dave is a special character, so we had some bit bad experience with him.
Hire or fire? Who knows?
As with all of Susi's business affairs, the interview will be held in strict privacy.
My hands are all sweaty now.
I told him once, I say, watch your behave so you don't screw up your future. We see from the interview what he will do to convince me that the position is for him.
Dave will have to wait until the end of the week to hear her decision. SusiAir HQ is also where the new recruits receive their training. 26-year-old former professional poker player Nick Holmes has gambled his life in the UK for the chance to train as a pilot with SusiAir.
Failure isn't an option. There's no other job waiting for me back at home or anywhere else.
So far, Nick has struggled on his test flights.
A bit too much? Yeah. Oh shit.
So a bit fast. Pitch up, pitch up.
Pitch up.
Oh, no, not demonstrate that again.
If this doesn't work, then I've no idea what I could do.
Today, it's Judgment Day. After just 6 weeks of training, Nick's taking his final test flight, which will determine whether or not he'll get the job.
Ready for takeoff.
The flight assessments that we do are very important. If a pilot does badly during flight training and he cannot land the airplane comfortably and nicely, he will not go on and be a line pilot.
To pass the test flight, Nick must show alertness of all potential dangers.
Traffic. Negative traffic.
The warning signals another plane is close enough to threaten a mid-air collision. With no radar to guide them, they must find the danger with their own eyes before it is too late.
We have no visual.
Traffic.
Everybody look out for traffic.
It's got to be in the clouds somewhere.
There he is.
Exit. You got him?
Yeah, no factor. Let's go.
To complete the test, Nick will have to conquer something he struggled with throughout training: landing the plane.
When we fly passengers, they judge the entire flight, they judge the entire company based on how the touchdown was. So it's very important that our pilots are able to touch down the Caravan without bouncing it and without making the passengers feel unsafe.
Caution, terrain.
Okay, look up.
To land safely, Nick must maintain the right height and speed of approach by pitching the plane at the correct angle.
Left. Full. Don't say full. You have to look. When I say left, you need to check it. And then don't look here, look at the white one.
If he gets it wrong, Nick will have to decide whether to abort the landing or risk stalling and crashing.
Whoa. No. Don't chop the power before you get to the flare. Left rudder.
Control.
Safely back on the ground, Nick will now find out if he's graduated.
The flight was challenging, and I was a little bit confused about exactly the way things should be done. And yeah, a bit disappointed that I didn't quite get it.
Nick didn't do 100%, so he needed prompting and reminding, just because he was getting a bit overloaded. So, to sum things up, your final flight, it was okay. It wasn't great. A couple of times I see you sort of freezing up and busy flying the aircraft.
Yeah.
That will be fixed. You've passed the flight training. The fourth flight was the last. Well done.
Great.
Despite some mistakes, Nick has managed to qualify as a co-pilot. He'll be behind the controls of a plane full of passengers in just 4 days' time.
In the bag.
He needs to dramatically improve, or his fledgling aviation career could be over. Computer programmer Matt Dearden jacked in his job 4 years ago to become a mountain pilot in one of the most remote regions of the world. Once he started flying out here, his priorities shifted dramatically.
I came out to Indonesia with aspirations, as most pilots do, to get some hours up and then head back to Europe and go flying for one of the airlines there. But, you know, within a few months of being out here, I thought, this is way more interesting than like being back in Europe. Why would I want to go back and do that, you know, when I can have this adventure lifestyle out here?
His job delivering supplies to cut-off communities provides him with an opportunity to see a way of life few people get the chance to experience.
This is the last frontier. Here I am in the absolute wilderness. You know, you got naked guys walking around with penis sheaths and spears and bows and arrows, and it was like, hell yeah, I want a piece of this action.
Today, he's delivering supplies to Tuput, the village of around 50 Dani people survives on hunting and highland farming. So these irregular supply drops are an important supplement.
Just kind of helping the people develop out here, it's hugely satisfying being able to do that.
So mungkin minggu depan ada penerbangan lagi. Sekarang tidak tahu. Semuanya charter sekarang.
So the guy's asking me when we're going to come back again. I don't know at the moment, so I just said to him, maybe next week, maybe next month. And he's like, okay, we'll wait for you to come back.
Matt's keen interest in the tribal people means he's happy to accept an invite to the local village. For his job, Matt has learned Bahasa, the national language, but there are 300 languages spoken amongst the tribes of Papua.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Tidak apa-apa. Tidak apa-apa, masuk.
Oh, wow. Obviously for small people, this place. Wow, that's awesome. Selamat sore semuanya.
Sore.
Wow, bagus ya.
Very primitive life. It's, you know, they got the fire here. They got a little bit of vegetables hanging up over there, and that's about it, eh? No Sky TV here.
So masak di atas api?
Ya, ini biasa taruh belanga pakai ini. Ini taruh belanga baru masak.
Masak apa?
Masak ubi, sayur, nasi.
This is the first time I've actually gone in one of these little huts. You know, I fly over them all the time, so yeah, this is awesome to actually to come and meet some of the people and actually check out how they live. It's amazing.
Ya, tidak pernah bule, tidak pernah masuk.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, he's just saying that I'm actually the first white person who's actually ever come into their village and into one of their little huts here. So yeah, that's a pretty cool privilege. For me, the ultimate kick flying in Papua is going to kind of new places that I've not been to before. I love doing that. I love just finding somewhere new.
Having finally graduated from the SusiAir flight school in Java, 26-year-old Nick is about to start his first posting in Medan on the island of Sumatra.
I have no idea where I'm going. I figured I'll just walk around, see if I can see
people who might be from SusiAir. No thanks.
Nick's only had a few hours in-air flight training with SusiAir, but now he's taking the massive step up to flying their passenger planes.
I am nervous about flying on the line because it's not going to be the same as the training. I want to appear to be confident and competent. I do worry that the captains will think, oh, this guy doesn't know anything, but I think realistically we can't be expected to know everything.
To add to the pressure, he's flying from the huge international airport of Kuala Namu, the second busiest in Indonesia, where he'll be sharing the runway with the big airliners. All new co-pilots are mentored by experienced captains. Nick will be under the watchful eye of Canadian Captain Jeff Lamb.
All the co-pilots have different experiences when they're new. Some are lazy, some are hardworking, some are trying too hard. So I can't wait to find out.
Nick will be flying to a strip that has a notoriously tricky final approach.
Pretty nervous about this first flight. I was looking in the route guide and it said recommended captains perform this approach. It's going to be quite challenging.
He's flying 230 miles to Aik Godang Airport in the center of Sumatra.
Okay, before taxi, check this, please. Okay, sure. Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
And number 20.
I have to remember. Yeah, to look at that.
Taking the huge step up to being responsible for all his passengers' lives is a lot of pressure. And Nick momentarily forgets what his job is.
Weather's a bit hazy, stay visual. Operationally standard takeoff. And threats, my first flight as a passenger. As a passenger? Flights, really? As a pilot.
Fortunately for Nick, his maiden passenger flight is blessed with the calmest weather Indonesia can offer. But there are other things to worry about. The airstrip is surrounded by mountains, so Nick will have to make a steep descent before banking sharply into the final approach to the runway.
Stay visual, look outside. The runway is over there.
Roger.
Look outside. You're flying in a lot of terrain. You have to keep your eyes outside.
Absolutely. Okay, the approach looks really quite straightforward. It might not be, but...
You're a little bit low. No reverse.
Oh, no
reverse.
I think you said full reverse.
By mistiming the touchdown, Nick's passengers get a much bumpier landing than usual.
The heart rate started to climb up just a tad, yeah, just a little bit. It was probably one of the, not the best landings I've had, even in experiences in Africa. She was a bit over to one side, so that's one I will not be telling the wife about, that's for sure.
Oh, my landing was terrible. Yeah, it was kind of a baptism of fire, you could say. But yeah, we walked away from it. Could have been worse.
Above all else, Nick did manage to deliver his passengers in one piece. But in Timika, Papua, mountain pilot Matt's cargo is far more likely to cause a problem if there is a bumpy landing. Pilots in Papua often find themselves delivering essential yet highly flammable fuel supplies.
Fuel drums, these are full of diesel. They count as a dangerous good. So we have to actually have an extra bit of paperwork for this one.
To help Indonesia's most remote communities become less isolated, some roads have been built between them. But the roads are useless if there isn't fuel to power the vehicles.
You want to be absolutely sure the cap is all on there secure. You get a bit of fuel leaking out, and that's not a pleasant thing at all. You want to have the windows all open and even go on the oxygen if you need to. Fumes in the cabin, really, really not good.
passing out from the fumes is not the only concern.
Because of the air pressure changes, what happens is they slowly expand, and as they expand, you get the drum will sort of make a hell of a bang. The first time you fly with them is very unnerving.
The diesel is being delivered to the Moni village of Bilai, 25 miles from Matt's base. The strip at this village was the site of a crash landing 2 years ago. Matt does a fly pass to check the landing strip is cleared to avoid making the same mistake, especially loaded with barrels of diesel.
Right, there's a lot of people on the runway here in Bilai. I can actually see them walking down the airstrip. We'll just come in a little bit and let them know we're here. Oh, bloody hundreds of them. People on the airstrip is not something you want at all. Heading a person with an aircraft, potentially obviously it'll kill the person, but potentially cause the aircraft to lose control as well. Sometimes they just don't learn, you know. Aircraft and people are not safe. You know, they've got to keep out the way. Okay, it looks nice and clear now. They've actually moved off to the side. Just land past those guys.
Matt's careful landing means he and the much-needed fuel have both arrived safely.
Yeah, health and safety would love this.
With the diesel unloaded, Matt takes the opportunity to investigate an all-too-real reminder of what happens when things go wrong. This plane may be worth millions of pounds, but it was a write-off when it crash-landed here and it was left to rot on the strip.
This is what's left of the fuselage of this aircraft. There's no instruments left, no seats. Most of the panels are missing, the engine's gone. All the wheels, undercarriage, it's all gone. You know, on top of this would have been a sort of an upper section, which I think I caught an eye of over there somewhere. I think they're using it for something else.
Given the village's lack of resources, it didn't take long for the crashed plane to be put to good use.
This is the top of the fuselage here. Painted a rather fetching green by the looks of it. Little hut for his scooter there. Oh wow, yeah. So these are the wings of the aircraft. Obviously now the walls of this little hut. Just never going to use them as an aircraft wing again. So yeah, might as well be the wall of the house. So 1 minute this thing's flying the skies up halfway, you know, delivering whatever it needs to. Next minute it's the garage for someone's moped. Funny old word.
I would say that's a normal day, but out here there's just no such thing as a normal day.
Matt's had 4 years to adjust from working in IT to flying in Indonesia, and the experience has completely changed the way he sees himself.
I really do feel like I'm a different person. It's basically, you know, I've gone from a normal kind of bloke just doing a normal kind of job back in a normal country, and now I'm, I guess, slightly crazy bloke doing a crazy job in a pretty crazy country.
And mountain pilot Matt couldn't be happier with the change. His search for the perfect job is over.
Papua is just the last frontier. It's the ultimate adventure, really. I don't want to fly 737 for Ryanair or an Airbus for EasyJet or whatever. This is proper flying. This is the real deal. This is what I actually want to do with my life. You know, I mean, I'm 34 now, so you start thinking about the future. Could I do this forever? I mean, from a fun and like selfish point of view, yeah, I mean, I probably could. It's awesome.
Still at the very beginning of his career, rookie co-pilot Nick has so far only made one rather bumpy passenger flight with SusiAir.
India, 5 minutes out.
The pressure is on for him to show a marked improvement.
We'll go flaps 10, please.
Speed check, flaps 10 selected.
On his second flight, he's being mentored by Captain Dave Burns.
Nicholas Holmes. Nicholas Sherlock Holmes. Oh my god, your surname's Holmes and you remind me just like Benedict Cumberbatch.
Benedict Cumberbatch is a knob.
For the return leg, Nick will be taking the controls.
I've just heard like the landings might be an issue, which is pretty much the the most important part. But we've got a game sorted. We need him up to speed. So that's the aim of the game today.
Oh, ready as I'll ever be. No big deal. You know? Well, I say that now.
But Nick's flying skills are about to come under intense scrutiny.
You saw my umbrella?
A VIP and his entourage are unexpectedly joining the flight.
How are you?
Fine.
He's a special envoy to the Indonesian president, the most powerful man in the country.
If the pilot is a white man, oh, they really trust the pilot.
Dave suddenly realizes their trusting passenger is a personal friend of their feared boss, Susi.
Alright, we've got to be good on this because of this guy. This guy, no, Susie, I know who he is now.
Dave doesn't want to do anything to upset boss Susi, so he'll be keeping a very close eye on Nick.
He's added pressure onto Nick. He's going to make it as comfortable as possible because otherwise this guy will tell Susi and he'll get fired.
Oh, no pressure or anything.
No pressure or anything.
Traffic.
It's okay, continue, just police helicopter on the right there.
Keen to keep Susi's business contact, the special envoy, happy, Dave offers Nick as much advice as possible.
Because we're quite heavy on the back, because it wants to flare, just push the nose forward and just land. And just maintain 85. Move.
Bravo Victor India, Rally 37, Ticket 5 Echo.
He's happy with it? That's good.
A little bit up and down. It's okay. Yeah.
The landing wasn't the prettiest, but everything else is okay, and the landing, I can always make that better.
He was absolutely fine, so I've been with much worse.
Having finished the week's flying without any serious incidents, the SusiAir team can afford to let off some steam. Dave has been waiting patiently to hear news about the job he went for as a base manager.
I haven't been offered the base manager's job, but I've been offered the deputy base manager's job. I think Susi likes my feistiness for some reason. She likes the fact that how I was nearly fired 9 months ago, and somehow we've just had a complete turnaround.
Nick's also celebrating. He's now well on the way to being accepted as a fully fledged SusiAir pilot. But he's still coming to terms with taking passengers' lives into his hands.
actually flying passengers is interesting. I think it actually negatively affects my flying. You know, it's that little extra bit of pressure. But it can only get better. I don't think it can get much worse anyway.
After getting the thumbs up from boss Susi, Dave is settling into his new job as deputy base manager.
This is our ticketing department. Busy at all times. Good. That's what we want. I think I base my management style on Richard Branson. He's very relaxed. He has lots of different ideas, but most importantly, he's a go-getter. And I hear he's a very good communicator. Have we made much money today? That means no.
He's hoping that his new position will take him a step closer to moving back to Britain for his dream job as a jet pilot.
I fire CVs to companies that operate big jet aircraft. So here we've got everything from Aer Lingus, we've got Cathay Pacific, Dragonair in Hong Kong, Emirates, Etihad, all. Literally, I've covered a lot there, a lot.
But he has never got past the interview, and his dream seems as far away as ever.
It's a bit disheartening when you send them all out and you don't really hear stuff back, but there's just so many pilots out there that need jobs, so you've just got to never give up. Never ever give up. It's still a very long way from me being home. A very, very long way.
Next time.
Look at the speed of that.
Pilots deal with the terrors of rush hour in Papua.
Traffic. Watch out for this guy.
And an election dispute gets out of hand.
We gotta get out of here. Once there's flood, that's it.
10 o'clock next Tuesday for Worst Places to Be a Pilot. 9 o'clock tomorrow night, brand new grand designs and a build that'll have us all on the edge, the cliff's edge. Next tonight, when jazz cigarettes get in the way of running a hotel. A clear head, a key ingredient in Ramsey's hotel hell.